All right, what's up? I'm back. I know, it's fucking annoying. Now I'm putting out too many videos, right? Now it's too many videos. Before, you weren't putting out enough videos. Now you're putting out too many videos, and now it's going to be something else next time. All right. So in this video, I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the ideas in libertarianism. And now, I'm not going to be giving a pitch for a full anarcho-capitalist, no-state solution, but more just giving you some ideas about how libertarianism can actually help low-income people. Because I think a lot of times when people hear libertarian, they immediately think like Elon Musk, like flying to the moon and the governments can't hold him down and he has like an infinite amount of money and he's not paying any taxes or whatever. But there's also, some ideas in libertarianism that actually do help low-income people as well. And, if you have politicians in your area and you're trying to get these type of things implemented, it could actually help. Now, we're just going to look at what libertarian is, like the first couple paragraphs here, so we can get a better understanding of what it is. Libertarianism. Libertarian from the French libertare, libertarian from the Latin libertas, for freedom, is a political philosophy that holds freedom, personal sovereignty, and liberty as primary values. Many libertarians believe that the concept of freedom is in accord with the non-aggression principle, according to which each individual has the right to live as they choose as long as they do not violate the rights of others by initiating force or fraud against them. Libertarian has been broadly shaped by liberal ideas. Libertarians advocate the expansion of individual autonomy and political self-determination, emphasizing the principles of equality before the law and the protection of civil rights, including the rights to freedom of association, freedom of speech, freedom of thought, freedom of choice. They generally support individual liberty and oppose authority, state power, welfare, militarism, nationalism, but some libertarians diverge on the scope and nature of their position to existing economic and political systems. See, that's me. And see, I think when a lot of like low-income people, when they hear that libertarians are against welfare, they kind of immediately are like, well, that's bad. But we'll explore that in a second. So, what are some of the concepts from libertarianism that will actually help low-income people? Now, I think the first and probably most important one would be like deregulation. Now, what deregulation would do would be allow you or any low-income person to start a small business without as much overhead. Because a lot of starting a small business is that you have to pay licensing fees, get a corporation, have a location, have all these overhead costs before you can even start the business, right? Like say, for example, you wanted to start a business in your kitchen baking cookies, right? And like it's pretty doable. It's something that is doable, but the problem comes when, you have to have licensing fees for the kitchen inspection, and that cuts into the profit of your, baking. So you can see it's similar things like a Uber. Like say you have a car and you want to drive people around, but now you've got to get extra insurance and a special type of license to have a taxi license. Or you end up working for Uber because they pay for all those things, right? So basically, whenever you have a lot of regulations, that centralizes power with the wealthy, because only the wealthy can afford to pay for all the fees and licensing and stuff like that. Let me give a kind of like modern example, right? For instance, like to make a video tube site is not really that difficult. Like the coding and things like that are not really that difficult. So like, for example, you've got Odyssey, you've got Kick, Twitch, all like any computer programmer can like make a website like that. But the problem comes when you have to have all of these AI systems that monitor and scan for, racism and sexism and pornography and all these things. And I'm not saying those things are good, but you can see the AI system that scans for all that stuff, that's scanning for millions and millions of videos a day or per second or whatever, that in and of itself costs a lot. And that's what makes it prohibitive for other people to start a video website. So you can see like how having too many laws and too many regulations on private individuals, especially when it comes to starting a small business. Now, maybe if they have a large corporation, then maybe they should have more regulations. But it seems the way that things are going now, the large corporations get less regulations and the small businesses get more regulations. Or there's an equal amount, but because the small business has less money, it affects them more, if that makes sense. So like say, you wanted to sell clothes, if you don't have to pay taxes on the clothes that you sell, then you get more money, right? And it's just things like that where it comes to deregulation and lowering taxes that actually gives you more money. And it gives you, not only does it give you more money, but in a capitalist society, your money is your political power. So therefore it gives you more political power. When you have it's the same thing with like the Uber or with YouTube, you're giving because there's so many laws, you have to hand over your power of choice to YouTube. You have to hand over your power of choice to Uber. And then they set the rules, they set the terms, they set the conditions because they're the only people that can afford to pay for all the licensings and fees, right? So that's one thing. And then another thing is privatizing the police. Now, privatizing the police is one of the more controversial things that people talk about in libertarianism because it's kind of difficult to have a non-centralized legal system because then there's going to be disputes between legal systems. But I think that in the United States, as long as all, private police basically follow the same set of rules, and it's just more about you paying them directly and from your community. And then it's like when you go to the store, I'm not saying you're buying a person, but when you spend money, you tell the business what to do for you, right? So if you pay for private police in your neighborhood, then you basically set the rules for them. You tell them, hey, we don't want you, harassing people. We don't want you roughing people up unless they're actually doing something like violent to someone else, right? And we're not going to pay you if you do that, because like right now you can't do that. You can't fire a cop, right? If a cop is harassing everybody in your neighborhood, you can't fire them. But if it was a private police force and you were directly paying them and everybody in your neighborhood was like, oh, this guy's harassing everybody, then you just don't pay him. Right? And it's like these small things like that, like we don't have to change the complete system, but just moving towards that and just even having these ideas and understanding that, people that are advocating for these ideas, they're not evil. They're not trying to like hurt people or, do anything like that. They actually have a fully worked out system that if everybody followed the system, the life would actually be a lot better for everybody. Because everybody would be able to practice their own religious beliefs and they wouldn't have to worry about other people bothering them. And people would it would be easier for people to make money because they wouldn't have to pay taxes and they wouldn't be under control as much. And so, there's a lot of different ideas for why, it is actually better for low income people, like for instance, you'll have, like for example, like with marriage, if there's no state marriage, then there's no courts to give you child support and alimony and take away your house and all that stuff. And you would just use a regular, legal contract. And it would just be like any other legal contract where you already decide what's going to happen at the beginning of the contract, not afterwards. So those are just some basic ideas. I'm not really like a super expert, like libertarian debater person. I'm not really like an orthodox libertarian either, or anything like that. I just, they have some really good ideas, and you can't deny when someone has good ideas, But I also think that, a lot of people, especially low income people, a lot of times when you see libertarians, they are, kind of wealthy or more wealthy. They're usually white. I mean, there was like that guy T, and basically him and Young Ripa. Young Ripa is like probably the only like prominent black libertarian. Actually, matter of fact, let me pull up his channel for you. Let me scroll through this. I'm like, do not miss it. I can never find anyone's channel through this way. What the heck? I know I'm subscribed to him. Hold on. See, I don't know why I can't find it in there. But yeah, he's probably like the only black libertarian online, really. Like, I mean, there's some others, but he's probably like the most prominent. He knows all the stuff about it. But like, I'm not an expert, so you can research it yourself, or check out his channel, or there's a bunch of other libertarians, and maybe some other libertarians who are listening to this could, excuse me, put together some ideas for, why libertarianism is good for low income people. Because I think that a lot of low income people, they do hear, you want to take away welfare and, change the police system, and they kind of are like, immediately when you say stuff like that, it kind of makes it seem a certain way. So, like I said, I'm not the best at explaining all these points. I'm just giving some ideas, and, I don't know. That's all I got for this one. Might be back later, might not. Who knows when I'll pop up next. Alrighty. Have a good day, and peace.